Obscura.
Welcome to Anthology Obscura. I'm Louie, and I'm joined by Chris.
Good afternoon, evening, afternoon, evening, something like that.
Afternoon, evening. It's summertime, so the sun's still out till 9 o'clock. So that's the way it goes.
Mid to late afternoon today.
Yeah, what is it? Midday?
Mid to late afternoon.
Mid to late afternoon. But yes, today on the show we're going to be talking Tales from the Darkside, Love Hungry. Now, Chris, Tales from the Darkside. I have a feeling you didn't watch the show much growing up. Did you?
You'd be right. I don't think I honestly ever watched it as a kid. And my first introduction to Tales from the Darkside was the movie. I remember seeing the movie before I ever saw any episodes of the show ever.
It's funny because we're only a couple of years, 2 years apart in age.
Right.
And it's always freaks me out that I have memories of some of these shows because this is one of, most people, nostalgia, Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, Transformers, G.I. Joe. One of my earliest memories. Stuff. Yeah, one of my earliest memories. Tales from the Darkside. And here's the little backstory. And that's why I want to cover this episode because I'm about, I'd say 75% sure that this was the first episode of Tales from the Darkside I watched. Now, I have a very vague memory, a very, very vague memory. Obviously, I've seen it throughout the years, but I have one of my first memories of this show. I must have been 3, 4 years old, and I was at my grandmother's apartment, and my mom was there. I don't know if my grandma was babysitting me for the night or something. My mom was going to go out and do something along those lines. That's usually how I watch a lot of this inappropriate shit I wasn't supposed to be watching at this age. And I have this memory. It's a very brief memory. I was in my grandmother's bedroom, and she had 2 TVs, one in the living room, one in her bedroom. She had a 1-bedroom apartment. She lived by herself. And in the bedroom, she had literally the smallest TV I think I've ever seen. It was a foot. It was 12 feet. It was not even 12 feet. 12 inches. 12 inches, I mean, not feet. I don't know feet. I don't know inches. Yes, 12 inches. It was tiny. Do you remember those really tiny TVs?
Yeah, the 13-inch TV. Yeah, I think Bill had that was Bill's first TV too. In his bedroom was a 13-inch TV.
Tiny. My fucking monitor in front of me right now is bigger than this television. And it was no cable. So it had the fucking antenna on it that you had to fucking hang out the window. Yeah, the rabbit ears to get that good connection. And I remember my mom saying, "Oh, I'll be back in a few," and she left. She left me in the room. I don't know what I was watching, and I used to watch a lot of shit on Channel 11, late at night, Channel 9, and I'd go up to the TV and turn the knob to change the channel because there was no goddamn remote in this little tiny ass TV. And I remember changing it. And just changing it to something. It was 4 channels. There wasn't much to choose from.
That very heavy clicking sound when you turn the knobs.
It was old ass TV, tiny once again. And I turned to a channel, something else was on. That ended. It was something that grabbed my attention. I don't know what the fuck it was. That part I can't remember. But I remember changing it to that channel, watching the end of something, and then Tales from the Darkside starts. Now I'm 3 or 4. And I think what most people remember about this show is the intro. That creepy ass music.
A place that is just as real, but not as brightly lit. A dark side.
It's it almost looks like a Bob Ross painting, but made to be sinister.
But exactly, a sinister, a creepy version. Which I guess is the point of it, since it's the dark side of things.
It's the dark side, because you're supposed to be seeing it all during the day, and then it gets, all it is an invert. They just inverted the footage to make it look like it was dark. But I remember being 3 or 4 and being like, what the fuck is this? I didn't say what the fuck is this, but in my brain, I'm like, what is this? And I remember watching this episode. and being scared of it because, and when we get into it, it's not a scary episode. It's kind of like you could see why a kid would like watch it and not be frightened of it. I was only scared of the intro.
Well, yeah.
You know? And
it's got a little goofy edge to it, but it does have some stuff we'll get into.
No, it does. And I'll say this, the stuff that's not horror or scary or dark, again, a 3-year-old would be like, oh, you know, the puppets and shit. You'd think this is like a show geared towards children that's on at 9:30 at night. You know what I mean? So I just remember watching this and just being like so scared of that intro and fucking creeped out. And then being confused because then it went into this episode, Love Hungry, that kind of has like kind of something like Pee-wee Herman vibes to it. Yeah. And I was very much into Pee-wee at the time. And the fruit puppets kind of, you know, emulate something that would appear on Pee-wee's Playhouse, you know?
Or like a Sesame Street, like any of those kind of kids shows at that time had the puppets, and it's not for kids. These puppets are not for kids.
This episode's not for kids, and honestly, I didn't understand half of it when I watched it. And I remember watching this episode like over the years. I remember they played reruns, I think in the late 90s, early 2000s on Sci-Fi.
Yeah.
So I'd catch it there. And I think most people around our age, Tales from the Darkside is probably one of their earliest exposure like to anthology horror television. It has to be. Besides Tales from the Crypt, because this predates that. This came out, if I remember correctly, I think it was like mid-'80s, and Tales from the Crypt was late '80s. So this was like something people were watching a lot at the time. Obviously, a little later came all the kid-friendly anthology stuff that we all know, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Goosebumps, and all that jazz. And there's tons of shows, but I always feel like most people go back to Tales from the Darkside because that was kind of like the introduction to this, you know, genre of storytelling, I guess you could say, specifically horror storytelling. And the show itself...
I think like you could say Twilight Zone was like the first popular anthology, but then, you know, it disappeared. And even in the mid-'80s, they tried to revive Twilight Zone to not as much success as the original. And I think Tales from the Darkside was kind of like the one to sort of jumpstart that anthology TV format for horror once again.
If I remember correctly, the 80s Twilight Zone was on. We haven't even covered that show yet. I'm sure we're going to get to that eventually. But the 80s Twilight Zone was on around the same time as like Tales from the Darkside, I mean, Monsters. I think it was all around the same time.
I don't think it was as big of a hit as the original Twilight Zone. I mean, there's good stuff in it that we'll talk about at another time. But I think Tales from the Darkside was more of the like.
It lasted longer too.
The more popular of it did most certainly. Well, the more popular like anthology series of that time.
I'm pretty sure, and I didn't obviously research this, but I think the 80s Twilight Zone only lasted 2 seasons, maybe even 1. I might be completely wrong, but I don't think it lasted long. Tales from the Darkside lasted like 4 seasons, I think 4 or 5, if I remember correctly. So it definitely had a run. And a lot of these shows, Freddy's Nightmares was on around this time too, and that had 2 seasons, but it was an insanely long 2 seasons of Freddy's Nightmares. It's funny because these shows, dude, always had like a shit ton of episodes. Like I've been revisiting Freddy's Nightmares, and like each season's like 25 episodes. I'm not used to that.
I was just looking up the Twilight Zone just for reference, and it was 3 seasons. And it's like 65 episodes in 3 seasons. Like it's a shitload of episodes. So
it's 3 seasons. So it was close to Tales from the Darkside. Wow, I thought it was less than that. I didn't realize it was. I
could not tell you outside of like maybe a dozen episodes at the very most of like what those episodes were. Like there's the first one I know is the Bruce Willis one. That's like
that's the one everyone knows.
The most famous one of the 80s Twilight Zone. But like onto Tales from the Darkside, they didn't really have like name actors like that in a lot of the episodes. In a lot of them.
From time to time.
In a couple episodes, but more
George
so
Romero was involved with
he was
this
executive
show.
Producer,
so that was a big deal. That's, someone to someone of note, if I remember correctly.
I think
I'm pretty sure it's this show, not Monsters.
It is the show, yeah.
Yeah, because Monsters and Tales from the Darkside, dude, have I'm pretty sure some of the people behind Tales from the Darkside were involved with Monsters as well. It's like the same, like, similar groups of people. And
there's an interesting overlap.
And when you watch Tales from the Darkside, there are actors, like there's some actors I recognize for sure. I can't name any off the top of my head right now, but like this episode we're going to be covering, they're kind of basically TV actors, but there definitely are episodes where you see there'll be faces you recognize, similar to it's funny, dude, because I feel like the late 80s, and since this is like the anthology spinoff of Haunted Hangover, Amazing Stories was like helmed by Steven Spielberg and stuff. Like that was his anthology show around the same time. Yeah. So it's just crazy how popular at one point like that format was. But this is always, like I said before, this is kind of the one everyone goes to when it comes to horror. Besides Tales from the Crypt, obviously. I just love how everything's Tales from, and that's kind of that sums up what all these shows are, and I think that's what's so special about all of them, going back to why we're covering all of them or as much as we can on this show, just to kind of highlight episodes we like. And I think this episode that we're going to be talking about is obscure because I rarely ever see people mention this episode of Tales from the Darkside. Usually when
I'd never seen it prior to
heard of
watching
it, right?
it for this episode.
I sent you a link to watch it?
Never.
But yeah, I feel like this episode, when people think of Tales from the Darkside, they usually think about there's a Halloween episode called Trick or Treat, which is really popular. There's another episode, I forget the name of it, with this like little gnome monster. I have like a brain fart. I know the name, but it completely I just went blank remembering it. That's a really popular one. You do see images of the monsters. Usually the creature episodes are always the most popular for obvious reasons, And I always feel like this show was geared more towards children. As funny as that sounds, it's not supposed to be.
Monsters, I feel for sure, was like way more. Monsters, I remember like watching on Sci-Fi Channel all the time, and like it was just goofy. Like a lot of the stuff was goofier.
Yeah, there was like sex and shit like that too.
Yeah, but like
these shows, and like if you were 6, you were like, oh shit, I'm supposed to be covering
the zombies were like eating people, and like but it was like the over dramatic like licking of the lips and that kind of silly stuff. Like it was fun, and this episode kind of fits into that more. I think like there's a lot of like as we go, we'll talk about like the overacting of some of the people in the episode, which I think is kind of like plays for gags, and it was a fun episode. I enjoyed it, and like I was texting you, and I was like, it does take a dark turn, which I think is Tales from the Dark Side. So clearly, it's got it at some point, but. I had fun with this episode.
I think overacting is an important aspect of all these shows. If Sammy was with us right now, she's not in this episode. She's not taking part in it. Obviously, she'd get a kick out of some of the overacting in this one.
Right.
So, but yeah, with all that out of the way, let's just jump into the episode. Tales from the Dark Side. Love Hungry.
Hey, lady, whoa! Just a simple question here.
No. It's not a simple question when a banana asks it. It's not a simple question at all.
Hey, you got a problem with bananas, lady?
Yes, with talking bananas, yes, I do.
So, Tales from the Dark Side, Love Hungry was released on February 21st, 1988, a week after Valentine's Day. And this, you would think, like Love Hungry.
I was just over a month old when this episode came out.
Damn, look at that. You were an infant. You were a newborn baby in the crib.
I was 30 days old or something? 14th of January to the 21st of February, whatever that is.
Pooping in diapers and drinking out of a bottle. Or maybe something else. I don't know how your mom... I don't
know. We're not going to get into that on this podcast.
We're not going to get into those details. But yes, it was also... it was part of Season 4, Episode 11. Like I said before, this stars a bunch of unknowns. The lead, her name is Sharon Madame, which sounds like a porn name or a stage name for sure. Sharon Madame, right? Madam, Maddem. Madam.
Yeah.
Sharon Madame. She's just done a lot of TV. X-Files, Frasier, How I Met Your Mother. So that's predominantly, when you go on IMDb, that's her career. That's like all you really see on there. The director of this, I don't have his name in my notes, but when I IMDb'd him too. I think he directed 6 episodes.
John Streisig is the director.
Yeah, John Streisig. I was about to say, he has a really kind of funky name. He directed 6 episodes of Tales from the Darkside, an episode of Monsters, funny enough. So, like, he was really experienced with these type of shows, and this show specifically. There's also the other actor. I didn't write his name down. He plays Elmo in this.
Larry Gelman plays Elmo.
Yeah, he's a TV actor. That's
TV. A fucking name. That's a weird character name.
I feel like all these people have stage names, dude.
No. The character that he plays.
Oh, the character Elmo?
What kind of person is named Elmo?
Yo, there's a fuzzy red puppet monster on Sesame Street.
It was a very weird choice for a character's name.
Hey, Elmo. I guess that was a popular name at one point. And this, I think, I'm about 90% sure. I don't know my Sesame Street history, but I'm pretty sure this predates Elmo from Sesame Street because he came out, I think, in the early 90s, if I remember correctly.
Sure, I don't know.
But let's jump into the synopsis for Love Hungry. So we follow a work-from-home telemarketer named Betsy. She's a single woman. And she lives in this apartment alone with a bunch of plants. I'm talking a ridiculous amount of plants. It's a character trait. She's like talking to them and spraying fucking water all over them and shit. So I guess it's trying to insinuate that this is like her entire life. She's also kind of an asshole to people on the phone.
Yeah.
Did you get that
and
vibe
like
too?
she can't get a man, kind of. So she like has resorted to her plants. Like that's the kind of the vibe I got from her.
It's like the opposite of a cat lady. It's like a plant lady.
Yeah, she's like an old, like a spinster who like, doesn't do well with the men, so she makes up for it with the plants.
I do like that she's like a work from home telemarketer just because the way the world is now, like that was a thing even in the 80s.
Yeah, and I wanted to make note of that. And I guess like, so Stranger Things obviously did that on purpose with Joyce. Like it was a choice to like, because that was a thing that happened in the 80s. People were like telemarketers and like selling shit on the phone in the 80s. So they gave Joyce that job in the newest season. But it was just weird to me that like 2 recent episodes of what we're covering here both have, and there's like, obviously it's just a coincidence, but it's just weird to me that like both of them have a telemarketer job in it. And they're both like, well, obviously Stranger Things is 80s based, but it's 2 like 80s things with telemarketers. And I mean, I guess I knew that like that was a big market job in the 80s, but like to see it twice in like the span of a month is like, damn, this really was a fucking thing.
It was a thing, dude. The thing I always thought like telemarketers worked in an office. Like I always pictured them in like a little cube with like a phone,
cubicle kind of thing. Yes,
all day calling random numbers like on a list that they're given. But I guess even in the 80s when a pandemic wasn't a thing, I guess telemarketers worked from home. Like that was probably an easy gig to get. You probably have to you probably only get paid for the hours you put in or something. It's not probably salary based, something like that. Again, I don't know shit about telemarketers, but that's just what I'm assuming from Stranger Things and from this Tales from the Darkside episode. It
was very interesting that it happened twice in 2 things that we're covering in a month time.
There you go. It was a big 80s thing. I'm pretty sure that's like when 70s, 80s was like when being a telemarketer was a thing. Hey, man, it's a thing now, but a lot of it's like scam telemarketers, all bullshit, insurance, selling insurance, car insurance thing, home insurance, shit like that. Yeah, medical insurance. So, hey, it's a thing. But yeah, Betty is a compulsive eater. We learned that quick.
Yeah.
And she's constantly snacking on everything, but then she's also trying to lose weight. So there's a little bit of she's got like some issues with that kind of handling. Like she wants to lose weight, but she's always eating chips. There's like crumbs all over everything, stains all over everything. It's like a really cartoony version of someone.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's very much like it.
Like a slob.
Sort of like a mockery of like what a slob is. Yeah, like a big fat slob. Like that kind of like poking fun.
Yeah, and she tries, and they make it known that she tries several different weight loss programs, but like none of them work because of how. And they're trying to say that this woman's gross, like how often she's eating. And I'm not gonna lie, the actress Betty is not that big.
No, it's not like she's like, you know,
or gross,
like the mom in What's Eating Gilbert Grape, or like any kind of like.
She's not obese.
Like that. No,
like that's how you know
just,
this was the 80s, dude.
Right. Yeah.
Like very shallow.
The standards
shitty.
of what was considered like bad is very skewed. Very skewed.
And like I found it so odd because you know, and it took me back to another movie that I'm a big fan of, Frankenhooker, and in that movie, his girlfriend that dies early into the movie that he brings back, he turns her into part of her turns into Frankenhooker, into the monster he creates. She's supposed to be like fat, and they put like a little like fat suit on her, but she's not even like big. It's so odd. The 80s were a very weird time, but I guess again you think about it, like supermodels and shit like that.
Right,
they were rail thin.
Weird, unrealistic standards.
In a way, like, all they did was like the Kate Moss diet. It was like a cigarette and a Ritz cracker.
And
you know
Coke.
What I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of, I guess, was the look of women. But I just found it, like looking at it now in 2022, that this woman Betty is considered like obese, fat, gross pig.
Yeah,
when in reality,
looks like an average woman.
She didn't look big at all or gross. So
yeah.
Okay, 1988. So, while looking at the yellow pages, she comes across an advertisement for Weight Away, another weight loss program. Strangely enough, as she's looking at the pages, her phone rings, and a representative from Weight Away conveniently calls her and explains that their program works and that a package is already on its way to her apartment. And basically, she signed up without approving this. It was just like, hey, here you go. We're sending something to you to help with your weight loss.
Wouldn't be Tales from the Dark Side if there wasn't some kind of weird, company that can just get this stuff to you without signing up for it and not even thinking like, this is kind of fucking weird. But
it's ambiguous. They never even tell you who the fuck these people are.
Wait Away. They're just Wait Away.
They're just Wait Away. They're just some random ass company that's helping people with weight loss. Okay.
Right. Hello?
Wait Away calling. The call that will change your life.
I think you have...
Wait Away is not available on television or in bookstores or anywhere else for that matter.
How did you get...
At Wait Away, you don't get gimmicks like talking refrigerators.
How did you know? Who is this?
You get guarantees.
But...
We'll deliver this afternoon. Your wait is over.
Hello? What's going on?
Basically in a nutshell, the company provides new state-of-the-art technology, with one of the first pieces Betty gets being a hearing aid, which she eventually places into her ear. Now, the whole conundrum of this episode is Betty gets a call from her high school crush, Elmo, who we talked about
Elmo
briefly.
Shroud. What a fucking name.
Yeah, dude. A different time, 80s. That's, that's
Elmo Shroud. He sounds like it should be a fucking Dungeons and Dragons character.
Yeah, it's an interesting... You're right. I honestly forgot about his last name. The first name, I was so blown away by his name being Elmo. And when I hear Elmo, the first thing you think of is the Elmo that we all know.
Tickle Me Elmo, right?
Yeah, the little red monster. But yeah, he calls her and he explains that he'll be in town because I think he's like a salesman and he's traveling or something along those lines, some shit like that. And that he would love to see her. So he swings by later and he invites her out to dinner to a Mexican restaurant. This is where shit gets wild. So at the restaurant, keep in mind, she's having this nice conversation. There's plates of food. Like, they walk to this table with like enchiladas, quesadillas, burritos, beans and rice, guacamole, these big plates. And she's even like, oh, it's a lot of food, right? Again, insinuating that she's like this gluttonous creature of some kind.
Right, and she's just going to go to town on all this shit? That's what we're supposed to assume?
And basically what happens is she's talking to Emilio, and Emilio excuses himself. I think he has to go to the restroom. Elmo. What did I just say? Emilio? Emilio. The Mighty Ducks man. The Mighty Ducks man. I swear to God. Elmo excuses himself. He goes to the restroom, and she puts the earpiece in, and she starts to hear screaming, like excruciating pain. And she realizes it's all coming from the food. The burritos, the tacos, the enchiladas. We get like these shots of like people munching on the food, and like screams are just erupting from like their mouths.
Yeah, the closer the camera gets, the closer the camera gets on those shots, the grosser the food looked.
Oh God.
And like,
it's disgusting.
So what exactly was screaming? Like, were the individual ingredients all together screaming? Like, was it? Like the taco itself was so like an entire taco, which is made up of a bunch of different things. It's. I get that it's supposed to be like this super weird thing, but it was kind of funny. It was funny and gross at the same time. Because I said, as the camera got closer to all this stuff, like the tighter shots of like the tacos getting cut and all that, it looked disgusting.
Oh, it was the nastiest fucking Mexican food I've ever seen. Oh, there's even a quick scene where Elmo comes back. And he's got his like taco in front of him, and he's cutting it, and there's like cheese running out, and you just hear the screaming. The burrito is screaming.
The agonizing screams.
The fucking pain this poor burrito is in, and she passes out. Eventually, like hearing all this, it basically sounds like hell, like what you would think hell sounds like. When you go to a haunted house and you just hear like lost souls screaming, that's what this sounds like.
So the first thing that Wait Away sent her some kind of hearing aid device that can tune her into the death screams of the food that she's eating as a deterrent, I guess, which is, smart on their part. Good scheme, I guess. Like, if I was sitting eating a taco and it started fucking screaming at me, I'd stop eating it too. So
yes, and it's funny too because, at this point you don't know that. She just has the hearing aid. So as the audience, we don't know that this food has a soul of some kind. Right. That's what this hearing aid is. It's making it seem like the food you're eating has a soul and feels pain or something along those lines. That taco is a living thing.
There's a sentience to it.
It's a sentient taco that it can feel pain. So Elmo and Betty, they go back to her place, and Elmo's concerned with her, and you could really tell, and I do like this moment where, you could tell he's into her, and he thinks she's beautiful or pretty. He says something like that along. He compliments her, and she's still insecure about her weight because of him being her crush, and like the situation around it where it's like, he even says, I think earlier on, he's like, oh, you look like you're eating well or something, like you're looking well. You know what I mean? It's almost like they're pointing out that he doesn't give a shit that she's gained some weight, but it still bothers her, I guess, because she wants to look great. And I don't want to get into Elmo because I want to add more about kind of the character and the acting a little later. And what I do like what they did with Elmo and Betty as characters, that I just thought it was really well executed. All right, so at this point, Elmo is, he's out. Do we need to call a nurse? Do we need to call an ambulance? Get you to a doctor? Whatever. And he leaves, and he notices a package on her doorstep in front of her apartment, and he gives her the package. Surprise, surprise! It's from
Wait Away package number 2.
Yes, another package from them. I guess it's multiple. They're like Amazon. They can't send shit in one box.
Step 2.
It's got to come in two separate boxes. So yeah, he leaves. He hands her the box. She opens it up, and inside are a pair of cat eye glasses. Very stylish, very 50s style.
Very 80s, yeah.
Like pin, almost like pinup style, cat eye, like
they're
fashionable.
Cool. They're cool looking glasses.
And she puts them on, on her face, on her head, and she's wearing them on her eyes. And in front of her is a pear, a banana, and an apple that can now speak to her and have eyes and a mouth They have faces. They're living creatures.
We went from the screams of tacos to living fruits.
And at this point, the audience, we know, okay, the food items are alive. She thinks she's going crazy because they're telling her, hey, don't eat us. Please, don't eat us. We don't want to be killed, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, I'm going crazy, blah, blah. I'm just hungry because her belly's always rumbling because she's always snacking. And she walks over to the fridge, and inside the fridge is like a Jell-O mold and a roast beef or something. And both of them are also alive with faces and are talking her. And they say not to eat. Please don't eat me. Please, please, please. And they're all like, I love how the fruit and the food in general is kind of like shitting on the other one. Like, oh, eat her. She's an apple. Yeah. She's delicious. No, eat the steak. Eat the banana.
No, what about chocolate-covered pears? That one's great.
Like they're all just trying to like butter
fight
the
for
other
their
one
own survival.
up. Yeah. Making the other one more delicious than their current fruit or whatever kind of food item that they are. But I don't want to get into the ending, but I'll say this to end the synopsis. As her belly continues to rumble and continue to just, she wants something. Betty has to make a choice whether to fight this hunger or eat now her living food.
Right.
Chow down on something that does not want to be eaten.
Live with the decision that you've just eaten. Living something that has begged you not to do so.
Yes. And that was Tales from the Darkside, Love Hungry.
Is there something wrong?
No. I've got something in my ear. I can't get it out. Oh, it's okay.
This looks just great.
Now, before we go into the ending of this episode, because I just want to talk about a few other things that we liked about this episode, some of our favorite things about this episode. I want to focus on the cast first and kind of go back to what I was saying a few minutes ago. One of the things I love about this episode, and I think it does right, is the character of Elmo. As much as his name is fucking weird, he's not like this drop-dead gorgeous guy. He's like a middle-aged man who's balding. He's short, too, if you notice. Yeah, he's wearing glasses. It's not like Fabio, because this is the 80s. Fabio was the shit. It's not like he strolled into her apartment, trying to like, hey, let's, you look like shit. Like, he was not a shallow person himself. No, yeah. And he wasn't this model.
He was just genuinely into this lady.
And I like how that plays up people's insecurities on some real shit. Because if you think about it, like he does point out that she's gained some weight, but he never makes it a bad thing. Mm-hmm. He notices
He's not malicious in it. He's not
malicious at all. He notices it, but he's never like, "Damn, you're fat" or something like that. He never uses those words. And he's kind of just going with the flow and happy to be with her. And she's blind to that shit. Betty does not realize this dude, he's feeling her.
She's caught up in her own insecurities and it takes over.
And it's kind of crazy because when you watch this, there's a lot of people that really suffer from this. They think they're gross and ugly. I don't know what the right term is.
It's like a dysmorphia, body dysmorphia. It's exactly.
A thing. And she, in her mind, she's not good enough for Elmo. When in reality, there's nothing wrong with either one of them, and it's not like, and it's one thing because I feel like there's a Tales from the Darkside, there's a Tales from the Crypt episode kind of like this with an old man who wants to be young, and he's like Arnold Schwarzenegger actually directed that episode, and he's getting like these new body parts to make him feel younger and sexier, and it's a similar situation where in this episode she feels like she has to lose all this weight so that Elmo likes her when he already likes her.
He already does.
And I like that. And I actually think the performances to focus on, Betty and Elmo are actually really good for something that you would think would be ridiculously hokey.
I was going to say, like, while the guy that plays Elmo, there is a bit of, like, cheesiness to the entire episode. The guy's eyes are so friggin' expressive. He has like really great eyes for the stuff that his character is like, and he emotes super well through he's got these big fucking bug eyes. And and there's a couple of scenes where he is really wide-eyed, and I think it sells the episode through his expressions. I think he does really well with the material that's there.
What'd you think of Betty? Like, what'd you think of her?
I think she was great too. I think the whole cast, and I think like, you know, you're not necessarily supposed to like her as much because, like you said earlier, she is kind of a bee on the phone when she's
early on,
when she's like at work. But also, you could take that as like she's just generally unhappy with things, so like it kind of bleeds into stuff every once in a while. But I mean, I don't think she was bad, but I did like his performance a little bit better.
Yeah, early on, I feel like they were trying to make you not be on her side. And by the end of it, you do feel really bad for him. And we'll get into the ending in a bit. But by the end of it, you're just like, girl, you're blind. Like, this dude liked you, and you didn't have to, like, be skinny for him to, like, want to be with you or date you or see you. Again, by the end of it, you feel really bad for her. Even though I think early on they definitely were trying to make you not feel bad for her, to kind of be like,
but
oh,
then
this
it's like you don't
have
to go through all this stuff. Like this, everything that you're trying to get is like right here.
Yeah, and I want to point out this cast is small. There's like basically Elmo and Betty. That's it. Those are the two people. There's a couple of others, like there's the landlady and a couple of...
There's a guy on the phone from the wait away. Yeah.
People in the restaurant. But the other kind of supporting roles really are the fruit. And I want to talk about that. And the food, I should say, because it's fruit and then also the food in the fridge.
Right.
The puppets. Dude, going back to what I said at the opening of the show, the talking fruit and food is what I vividly remember seeing as a kid.
Well, yeah.
Like, that image of them like pleading for their lives not to be eaten, I'm just like, that like just brings me back to being a kid. Like I remember seeing this episode as a child and just being so confused as to why this fruit and the ending stuck out to me too and was really eerie. But again, we'll get to that in a sec. But the fruit screaming and like they become her friends basically. That's kind of what
like she bonds with this talking living fruit.
And they each have a different personality and a different voice.
Different voice, absolutely.
Is it just me or did like the roast beef or meatloaf or whatever that was supposed to be in the fridge sound like Sylvester Stallone? Like they were going for like a Philly...
the punch drunky kind of,
I was like, wait a second. Are they trying to mimic that fucking thing is supposed to sound like him? Because that's what I took it as. And then like, I don't know if is it the pear of the apple has like a southern accent?
The pear.
Yeah. I just love how they all, and like one of them has like a New York accent. I think it was the banana. Has like a New York accent.
No, the apple does because it's the big apple.
Yes, the apple. You're right. The apple. I knew one of them had a New York accent. We're from fucking New York, and I didn't even fucking catch that. Right. That went over my head. But yeah, I just love how they gave them their own little personalities. Each piece of the Jello mold, and like some are male, some are female.
They're only in like, you know, it's a 21-minute runtime for the episode. They're only in like maybe 6 minutes of the entire runtime.
Yeah, it's like the last 10 minutes.
But they're like they're worked in as characters, like official characters in this story.
They are, and if you think about it, they're puppets, dude, and people had to voice them, and it's like Sesame Street almost, but with talking fruit, with their little like black beady eyes and the little slit in their mouth. Like it was just, they're like cute. But they're supposed to be like weird. It's some shit you would see like on Tim and Eric or on like fucking like Adult Swim at like 2 a.m. You'll fucking see something weird like this, and I just got a kick out of that. And
I enjoyed that. I thought there's the one I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
When I got to that, I was like, all right, this episode is fucking wonky.
And the there's a specific scene because there's actually like she's actually acting with the fruit where I think it's the pear. It's talking about being young and being fresh.
Your flesh gets soft, age spots, you get wrinkled, you start to smell. I don't think I want to think about it.
It's not a pretty thought.
Maybe old age isn't all it's cracked up to be. Maybe it's better to be demolished and digested while I'm still young and sweet and succulent and gorgeous.
I just like how that scene plays out, where the pear is almost egging her on. It's trying to prevent Betty from eating it, but at the same time, it's almost egging her on about life and being young and being fresh and being tight and being this, because eventually a fruit goes rotten and goes bad. And I like how
it's very, very allegorical for the
whole episode
passage of time in our life.
Yeah, and I do like how they did that with ridiculous talking Muppet, like Muppet puppet fruit. Like that's basically what it is. What about the plot? Like the whole plot. What did you think of it? Considering you had never seen this episode, what did you think of
like I said, when it got to the talking fruit, that's when I was like, all right, this episode is off the wall, but it's fucking cool. Like, and and then we'll get into where it leads to, and I think like you put it all together, and it's a solid episode.
And I think shit really hits the fan with the Mexican restaurant with the screaming tacos. Which honestly, dude, a little part of me, I wish he was wearing the glasses in the Mexican restaurant so you could see the fucking tacos.
Oh, I know.
Face. That plate that they had with all the different shit on it would have been like all faces. But then you're right. So you're trying to tell me a taco has every individual...
Right, each part of it? Yeah. Or is it the entire taco? Because then you go by this part next, right? Like each fruit comes to life individually. But like if you were to slice that apple up into like apple pie, would each slice of that apple be a living, breathing thing? Or is that the end of that apple? Like, there's a little bit of inconsistency in like the hearing the food being, eaten and tortured, and then seeing it as an entire piece,
At the end of the day, I think what it is this, Wait Away company just created this technology.
Sinister element to them. Yeah,
I don't even know if it's supernatural. It's more like they created this technology to make it appear as if your food is talking to you, when in reality the food isn't talking to you, because it's like almost like a hologram or like an illusion in a way. So like it kind of fucks with your mind to prevent you from eating, because that's kind of the whole point. So obviously the food isn't alive, but it's their way of kind of messing with you and preventing you from eating because you think it's alive. Which is funny, because you can also say this is like vegetarianism or veganism in a way, where people that are vegans or vegetarians don't want to eat stuff with a face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or anything that bleeds or poops. And like when you think about it, right? If you're a vegan or a vegetarian even, and you eat a tofu sandwich, right? There's no animal. Let's say you make a tofu sandwich, lettuce, tomatoes, carrots on a whole wheat grain bread with no animal products in it.
It was all grown.
It's all grown. But then you make if you think about it, you eat a ham and cheese sandwich. You've got the what is ham? Pork, I think, or a pig, right? And then you got milk from a cow. In a sandwich, bread. Well, not a lot of bread is vegan, but nonetheless, that came from two things that are living. So in a way, I feel like this is like an allegory for that too. A little bit. More so weight loss.
I can see that.
More so weight loss, but I do feel like maybe a happy accident was it could work for that as well. You know, we're just like all food's living. Technically, you know what I mean? Or in this world, all food is living technically, but in reality, some of the food, that steak you had, that burger you ate at one point had a face. It pooped, it bled at one point, and now you're fucking now you're stuffing your face.
Still good to me. Still good to me.
Hey man, listen, to each his own. Like, I'm vegetarian. I don't really talk about it on the podcast much, but like I try not to eat any animal products. I definitely try to like cut back on all my I have not had flesh of any kind in a very long time. And
no, you don't have to worry about your fruit talking to you either then.
But that's not true, because if I was wearing these glasses, my peanut butter and jelly sandwich would be talking to me if I'm trying to lose weight. I think that's at the end of the day. Right. That's really what the whole thing is. But I do think the story itself, I can't think, besides maybe again that Tales from the Crypt episode that Arnold Schwarzenegger directed, I can't think of anything else I've ever seen that's like this episode,
Yeah. There's, and then I mean we'll get into the ending, and there's
we're gonna get to that second. I do want to say one thing too that this reminded me of. So in Pee Wee's Playhouse, because I'm a big Pee Wee Herman fan, you can see him hanging out there in the background in the video version of the podcast. You can see him hanging there. when Pee-wee walks over to his fridge, whenever he's going to make something for the kids on the show, or he's going to show the kids at home something, he opens his fridge and all the food's alive.
Yeah.
Dude, they're like dancing and singing. Like the ice cubes are alive. That's what this reminded me of. Like when I was watching
it's
I was
very,
like, oh yeah.
very, very similar.
Yeah, it does. I just got a kick out of that. I was like, oh, this reminded me of Pee-wee's Playhouse. Like, it just reminded me of Pee-wee's fridge in his playhouse. All right, so let's jump into the ending. So in a nutshell, what happens at the end of this episode is Betty, is going a lot of back and forth between her and the fruit. She's hungry. She almost eats the banana. The banana screams because she's about to peel and break its head open.
Oof. Like rip its skin off.
Yeah, basically that's what she was gonna do, and she realizes that she can't do this, and she feels bad because these fruit have lives. They're living things, and it's kind of foreshadowed in the beginning of the episode that she's a knitter. She knits, I guess, sweaters or something. Something she knits, and what she does is we see her reach for the needle and thread.
Yeah, and she says something like, "I'll never eat you again," or so. I'll never eat something like this. Will never happen again. Yeah, something very foreshadowing.
As the apple, pear, and banana are like, "Oh, please."
They're rejoicing. They're saved. Yeah.
And still kind of throwing each other under the bus, though, the fruit, those damn fruit.
Right. Yeah, she gets a call from Elmo, and he's like, he's like, "Oh, I'll come over and you can cook for me." And he's like, "My favorite's apple pie." And the other two fruits are like, "Yeah, great, apple pie, fucking eat him."
Is that painful?
Painful? Let me peel your skin off, lady, huh?
Humiliating, too. Left alone with no friends, no one to talk to. You know how awful that is, Betsy.
Oh, I know how
We girls have to stick together.
But yeah, so 2 months pass by, and we see Elmo and the landlady go to Betty's apartment. And the landlady's like, she hasn't paid her rent in 2 months. And Elmo is like, yeah, I've been trying to get in contact with her, and I'm back in town, and I haven't been able to. So they're obviously concerned with Betty.
Right, and that's cool that Elmo, 2 months later, this girl is like MIA on him, and he's still like, he liked her enough to still be concerned about it,
Yeah. And it's insinuated again that he comes and goes a lot.
Right.
So I'm guessing he left again to go do some work shit and then comes back and he's like, wow, this girl. And it was the 80s, so no social media, none of that shit. You gotta call somebody to talk to them or send them a letter.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing, he's back in town. So he's like, I'm gonna go pay her a visit and make sure she's okay. So they go into her apartment. It smells bad, and they find Betty with her lips sewn shut and the 3 fruit in front of her rotten, and they're completely black. And it's insinuated that she starved to death. She's still wearing. I love how she's still wearing the glasses and the hearing aid. She died from starvation. And it's a really fucking dark, bleak.
That's where it ends too. The whole episode ends there. And she's dead, but so is the fruit that she didn't want to eat.
Exactly.
So it's like, if she would have just held on a little bit longer, would the fruit have died, rotted, whatever you want to call it? Would it have done that on its own? Probably. That's the life cycle of a fruit. So this wait away stuff caused her to go to the absolute end of extreme.
Yes.
When she didn't necessarily have to.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy too, because even the way you just put it, I would love to have seen more scenes of her. If this went on another 20 minutes of her battling. I'm assuming she constantly was battling eating them. And then eventually, we see her kind of it wasn't even that long. I think it's a day we see her wanting to eat the apple and the pear.
Yeah.
But I wonder if she did it the first time. Did she just sew her mouth shut and 2 months went by? Or did she die right away? What exactly? It's ambiguous, obviously. Right. But how long did it take her to really kind of just starve to? Did she just stand there with her lips sewn shut, looking at the fruit?
Sitting in that position? Yeah.
Because obviously she didn't work. She wouldn't be able to talk as a telemarketer. So I'm just I want more. I want more from this. I will say, dude, that final shot of her is eerie as shit.
Yeah. She's the just dead there with the rotted, gross fruit in front of her with the sewn shut mouth. That's a punch of an ending.
And how hokey, the first, 20 minutes of this episode is compared to the last 30 seconds. It's really dark. And again, I remember, dude, watching this, and that stuck with me. Like, that visual of her dead.
Being a kid, seeing that? Hell yeah.
Her fucking dead with her lips sewn shut. Scary and dead. Like, you feel really bad for her because she just wanted to be skinny. She just wanted to be.
She's gonna be skinny there. She's gonna fucking rot.
Oh, she should have been a lot more rotten too. I think 2 months she was laying there. Right. But again, we don't know how long she was like that until she starved and died. And again, it goes back to what the pair said. I'm gonna stay fresh and whatever and be ripe forever. And in reality, they weren't. And I do think the fruit being rotten kind of cements that they were always just fruit to begin with, and
right. It wasn't like they were really alive.
Yeah, them having a soul was all part of it, because obviously only she saw that. No one else did. It's kind of like a They Live situation where only Roddy Piper could see the aliens, and only anybody with the glasses on could see them. So, it's kind of that type of situation. But yeah, really depressing. And I do think either this episode is supposed to be like an allegory for like anorexia, maybe not eating.
Yeah.
Right.
There's some like eating disorder kind of stuff, obviously.
Yeah, obviously that's kind of what they were maybe hinting at here, where because think about it, just stop eating, just stop. Yeah, you'll get skinny and die. So like, and I also wanted to know, like, if she died from this, how many other people has this company fucked over?
Right.
There was probably an investigation with Wait Away after this. Like, hey guys, you killed this woman with these glasses and this hearing aid by making her think her fruit were talking to her. Like,
yeah. Or was Wait Away never real and was like all this like, Well,
she was wearing the glasses. They had to be real.
Right. But it was this like some kind of thing that was only happening to her kind of. I mean, that's all open for interpretation in these kind of like anthology supernatural shows. So it's always to have conversations like this about what really happened and what didn't kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, fucking Wait Away. That's like
they're run by
the
Satan.
national steroid trial.
Yo, dude, it reminds me, there's a segment in speaking of anthology, and we haven't covered a movie yet, but I'm sure eventually we'll jump into this one. But in Cat's Eye, are you familiar with Cat's Eye?
Yes.
In Cat's Eye, there's a segment where you have James Woods, and he is a smoker, and he goes to this company, and they're supposed to help him, quit smoking. And basically what they do is they like threaten your family. They say they're always watching you and don't smoke. And he starts freaking out, and he's, because of all the shit that's happening, and they really were watching him. They threatened to like kill his family or torture his family.
Right.
And this kind of reminded me of that. Obviously a little different with the glasses and the hearing aid and fruit, but it's almost like the extreme lengths people would go to.
Yeah.
To either quit something or to stop something, because eating is a problem. There are people that have, problems with weight. Yeah,
but I mean, this
is extreme. This was an extreme case.
This is the
and
extreme,
she also wasn't big. So I'm so good. So that was kind of, they should have just made like her look a little more obese, I guess, maybe, because I was like, she didn't look that big.
Oh, a regular looking lady.
So that was fucking strange. But would you recommend this episode, Chris?
Oh, absolutely. I would tell people basically nothing about it, though, because you gotta kind of like I said, I had never seen it before, and it's a roller coaster of an episode from start to finish. So I would recommend that you watch it blind. Don't listen to our episode.
No, I think too late. You're already listening to it. I think it's a great episode of Tales from the Dark Side. It's definitely hokey. Like, I'm not gonna say it's like this drama. It's not dramatic in a way.
Right. It's not until the very end.
But it's dark. It's got a dark side. Hence the title of the show.
It's a dark side, and there's a tale in there.
And I never thought I'd watch something where talking fruit would be fucking like mean-spirited. You know what I mean? Like talking puppet fruit would be so
driving someone to death.
So grimy to somebody. But yeah, if you've never seen Tales from the Dark Side, I'd recommend watching this. It's strange, horrific, and kind of funny.
You do look young and sweet and succulent and tasty, juicy, edible.
Lady, control yourself here!
Oh my God. What was I doing? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Pear. I don't want to hurt you. I'm just lightheaded and I don't know what I'm doing. And my stomach is screaming for food.
So that was Tales from the Dark Side, Love Hungry. Be sure to subscribe. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Haunted Hangover. Check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/Haunted Hangover 31.
And if you could rate and review us, that would be greatly appreciated.
And remember, the best cure for a hangover is
more booze.
Catch you guys later.